It was a quiet morning when animal rescuer Chloe received a call that would change everything. A small, trembling dog had been spotted in an alley behind a local store, alone and abandoned. The poor creature was barely visible, its matted fur blending into the dark shadows of the corner. The caller described the dog as tiny, with large, fearful eyes that darted back and forth, wary of anyone who came too close. Chloe grabbed her rescue kit and hurried to the scene. The moment she arrived, her heart sank. The alleyway was grimy and forgotten, a place no dog should have to endure. As she moved forward, Chloe spotted the dog, a small brown and white terrier mix curled into a ball, shaking in fear. Its ribs were visible, and its coat was caked with dirt and knots. It had clearly been on its own for far too long. "Hey there, buddy," Chloe whispered softly, her voice calm and reassuring. "I'm here to help. You're safe now." But the dog, frightened and distrustful, tried to scuttle away. Chloe took a step back, respecting the dog's space, and set down a small piece of chicken. She had learned that food could sometimes break down even the deepest walls of fear. Minutes passed, but eventually, the dog sniffed the air. Hesitant at first, it slowly crept toward the food, drawn by the scent. Chloe held her breath, staying perfectly still. The dog's eyes flicked up to her, then back to the food. It wasn't a complete trust yet, but it was a beginning. "Come on, little one," she murmured, offering a gentle smile. "You don't have to be scared anymore." The dog took a tentative bite of the chicken, and Chloe's heart soared. Slowly, but surely, she gained the dog's trust, and before long it allowed her to approach, allowing Chloe to slip a leash around its neck. As she led the trembling dog into her van, Chloe felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had saved another life, but she knew that the real work was just beginning. The dog, whom she named Charlie, would need a lot of care, patience, and love before it could heal from the trauma it had endured. At the rescue center, Charlie was immediately placed in a quiet room, away from the hustle and bustle of other animals. Chloe knew that dogs like Charlie, who had experienced neglect or abuse, needed time to adjust and feel safe again. The first step was to get a thorough medical exam. The vet examined Charlie carefully, his eyes widening in concern as he noticed the deep cuts on the dog's paws and the severe malnutrition. "This little one has been through a lot," the vet said, shaking his head. "But I think with time and care, Charlie can make a full recovery." Charlie was treated for his injuries, given medication, and placed on a special diet to help him regain strength. Chloe spent every day by his side, talking to him softly, offering him treats, and letting him know that he was loved. But even as Charlie began to regain his health, the emotional scars were not so easily healed. Charlie still flinched at sudden movements, and he was terrified of loud noises. It was clear that the dog had been through something traumatic, something that left deep emotional wounds. Chloe knew that love and patience were key to helping him trust again, and she was determined to be there for him every step of the way. As the weeks passed, Chloe could see progress. Charlie began to wag his tail when he saw her, and sometimes he would even jump up to greet her with a soft whine, his way of asking for attention. He would still shy away from other people, but Chloe could tell he was starting to understand that not everyone would hurt him. It was the day of Charlie's first adoption event when Chloe knew deep down that it was time for him to find his forever home. The event was set up in the local park, with a dozen other dogs from the rescue center, each hoping to catch the eye of a loving family. Chloe was nervous, but she knew it was the right step for Charlie. She had already spoken to several potential adopters, but none of them felt right. They were either too eager for a dog that didn't match their lifestyle or too impatient with the healing process. But then, a woman named Sarah walked up to Charlie's pen. Sarah was calm and kind, with a warmth in her eyes that made Chloe feel hopeful. Sarah knelt down beside Charlie's pen, and Charlie, after a few moments of hesitation, slowly approached her. There was a gentle connection between them, one that couldn't be ignored. Charlie cautiously licked Sarah's hand, his tail wagging slowly but steadily. "I think he's ready," Chloe said softly. "But it will take time. He still has some healing to do." "I understand," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "I've had dogs in the past who needed a little extra patience. I think we could give him that." Chloe felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had found the right person for Charlie, someone who would give him the love, care, and understanding he deserved. As Sarah filled out the adoption papers, Charlie sat by her side, his head resting on her knee. It was the first time in a long while that Chloe saw the spark of joy in his eyes. Charlie was finally going to be home. Weeks turned into months, and Chloe kept in touch with Sarah, always making sure that Charlie was adjusting well to his new life. She was overjoyed to hear that Charlie had blossomed under Sarah's care. He was no longer the scared little dog who had been abandoned in an alley. He was now a confident, loving companion who had found his place in the world. One afternoon, Chloe visited Sarah and Charlie's new home. The transformation was incredible. Charlie greeted Chloe with a wagging tail and a soft bark, his confidence shining through. He had a cozy bed, a bowl of toys, and most importantly, he had love. A love that would never fade. As Sarah and Chloe chatted, Charlie lay by their feet, content and peaceful. The healing was complete, and while Chloe would always remember the scared little dog she had found in that alley, she knew that Charlie's story was one of triumph, resilience, and the power of second chances. And with that, Chloe smiled, knowing that she had played a part in changing a life. It was all worth it. Every rescue, every challenge, every moment of love, it was all worth it. It was a quiet afternoon at the rescue center when Chloe received a call that caught her off guard. A woman had found an injured cat near a construction site. The cat was badly hurt, limping and unable to move much, and the woman had rushed it to the nearest animal hospital. Chloe's heart sank. Cats like this were often overlooked in the chaos of rescues, but she couldn't let that stop her from helping. After a brief conversation with the vet, Chloe learned that the cat, whom they had named Oliver, had suffered a broken leg, likely from being hit by a car or falling from a height. But it wasn't just the physical injuries that concerned Chloe. It was the cat's eyes. Oliver was terrified, refusing to let anyone near him, his pupils dilated with fear. Chloe, having worked with many animals, knew that gaining trust would be the most difficult part. Cats like Oliver often held on to their fear for a long time, and even with the best medical care, it was never guaranteed that they would open up again. Still, Chloe made the trip to the hospital to pick up Oliver. When she saw him in his cage, huddled in a corner, his eyes wide and full of terror, she knew it wouldn't be easy. But she also knew she had to try. The first few days were filled with small steps. Oliver refused to eat and wouldn't come near her. Chloe set up a quiet space for him in the rescue center, giving him room to breathe, letting him hide if he wanted to, but always offering food and water, a constant sign of care. She spoke softly to him, always maintaining a calm presence. Over time, Oliver began to show signs of curiosity, even if it was just the tiniest flick of his tail or a cautious glance in her direction. Every day, Chloe would sit quietly by his cage, never forcing him to come to her, but always making herself available. She talked to him about everything, the weather, the other animals at the center, and even her own day. She didn't expect him to understand, but the calmness in her voice seemed to reassure him. Days turned into weeks, and gradually, Oliver's broken leg began to heal. He became more comfortable with Chloe's presence, sitting closer to her, but still hesitant to fully trust her. It was as if he was testing the waters, unsure whether to let go of the fear that had controlled his life for so long. Then, one evening, as Chloe sat by his cage, she noticed Oliver approaching her. He hesitated for a moment before rubbing his cheek against her hand. Chloe held her breath, gently scratching his fur. It was a tiny step, but it was a step forward. The healing had begun. Weeks passed, and Oliver's progress was nothing short of miraculous. His leg healed completely, and his physical scars faded. But it was the emotional healing that took time. He still flinched at sudden movements, and loud noises made him jump. However, he had learned to trust Chloe in his own way. He would follow her around the rescue center, quietly observing her every move. Sometimes he would curl up beside her as she worked, his presence a quiet comfort. It was clear to Chloe that Oliver wasn't ready for adoption yet. He needed more time. Time to feel completely safe, to know that the world wasn't always a place full of fear. But Chloe was patient, and she was dedicated to giving him that time. She started taking Oliver on walks outside, using a leash and harness to help him feel secure. At first, he was unsure, but over time he grew more confident. The outdoors seemed to calm him, and he began to enjoy his walks, cautiously sniffing the grass and feeling the sunlight on his fur. One afternoon, while walking Oliver in the park, Chloe noticed a woman sitting on a bench watching them with a kind smile. She was an older woman, her face lined with experience, and her eyes sparkled with warmth. As they approached, the woman stood up and walked over to them. "That's quite a handsome cat you have there," she said softly, bending down to get a closer look at Oliver. "He's so gentle." Chloe smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "His name is Oliver. He's come a long way. He's still a bit shy, but he's getting better." The woman smiled warmly. "I've been looking for a companion for a while now. Someone quiet, someone who needs a little extra love." Chloe felt a tug in her heart. She had seen this look before. The look of someone who understood the importance of patience, of taking the time to truly connect with an animal. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I think Oliver might be the perfect fit," Chloe said, her voice steady. "But it's going to take time. He needs someone who can offer him patience and security." "I understand," the woman replied gently. "I've adopted many animals over the years, and I know that the right animal will find its way into your heart. I'm willing to give him the time he needs." A few weeks later, after careful consideration and several visits to the rescue center, the woman, whose name was Ruth, officially adopted Oliver. Chloe couldn't help but feel a bittersweet sense of pride. She had helped another animal heal, had helped them find a new beginning. But it wasn't goodbye. It was simply the start of a new chapter for Oliver. On the day of the adoption, Oliver walked out of the rescue center with Ruth, his tail held high for the first time in weeks. Chloe watched them go, knowing that this was the best thing for him. Oliver had found his person. He was no longer the broken, scared cat that had been left alone to fend for himself. He was a beloved pet on his way to a life full of love and security. As the door to the rescue center closed behind them, Chloe smiled to herself. This was why she did what she did. For moments like these. For the animals who needed a second chance, and for the people who opened their hearts to give it to them. She had done it again. Another life saved. Another animal given hope. Chloe had just finished cleaning the kennels one late afternoon when the phone rang again. This time it wasn't a call about a dog or a cat. It was a call about a rabbit. A woman had found a rabbit wandering around in her backyard, alone and scared. The woman had no idea where it came from, but couldn't leave it out there, especially with the predators in the area. She had managed to coax the rabbit into a box, and now it was waiting for Chloe at the local animal hospital. Chloe sighed but quickly grabbed her things and headed out. A rabbit was a different kind of rescue. They were fragile, easily scared, and often misunderstood in a world full of dogs and cats. But Chloe had a soft spot for all creatures, no matter their size or species. She knew the importance of helping even the most unlikely of animals. When she arrived at the hospital, she was led into a small room where the rabbit was being held. It was a small white rabbit with soft fur and big, expressive eyes that seemed to be scanning every corner of the room. Chloe noticed that it was trembling, clearly terrified of the unfamiliar surroundings. "Hey there, little one," Chloe said softly, crouching down to the rabbit's level. "It's okay. You're safe. Now." She slowly extended her hand, allowing the rabbit to sniff her fingers. It hesitated for a moment before taking a tentative step forward. Chloe smiled, relieved that the rabbit seemed to trust her already. She gently placed the rabbit in a transport carrier, lining it with soft bedding to make the journey to the rescue center as comfortable as possible. Back at the rescue center, Chloe set the rabbit up in a quiet corner, away from the other animals. She wasn't sure if it had been an escapee from a pet store or if it was a wild rabbit in need of care, but it was clear that the animal needed time to adjust. She called it Thistle, a name that seemed fitting for such a delicate creature. Thistle was extremely timid, not yet trusting of Chloe or the other animals in the shelter. He would only eat when Chloe wasn't around, hiding in the corners of his enclosure. But Chloe was patient. She spent hours sitting by his pen, talking to him softly, offering fresh vegetables and greens to coax him into eating. Slowly, over the next few days, Thistle started to come out of his shell. He began nibbling on the treats Chloe left for him and even allowed her to pet him gently, though he would often freeze in place, his ears alert and his body tense. Chloe didn't mind. She knew that with time, he would learn to feel safe. One afternoon, as Chloe was preparing Thistle's meal, she noticed something strange. Thistle was no longer hiding in the corners. Instead, he was sitting in the center of his pen, calmly watching Chloe prepare his food. He didn't seem as scared anymore. It was a small moment, but it was a big victory. "I think you're starting to trust me," Chloe said with a smile, offering Thistle a leafy green. "That's a good sign, buddy." Weeks passed, and Thistle's transformation continued. He became more confident, hopping around his enclosure, greeting Chloe with a soft twitch of his nose when she entered. He still had moments of caution, but he no longer ran in fear. He was beginning to understand that the world was not as scary as it once seemed. One day, as Chloe was cleaning up, a family came into the shelter looking for a companion for their young daughter. They had heard about the rescue center and were specifically interested in adopting a rabbit. Chloe showed them to Thistle's pen, and the moment the young girl saw him, her face lit up. She was gentle and kind, her voice soft as she spoke to him. "Look, Mom, he's so cute," the girl said, her eyes sparkling. "Can we take him home?" Chloe watched as the family interacted with Thistle. The little girl was calm and patient, sitting quietly beside his pen, letting him approach her on his own terms. It was clear that this was a family that understood the importance of patience and care, and they seemed like the perfect match for Thistle. "I think Thistle would do well with you," Chloe said, smiling. "But I'll warn you, he's still a little shy. He might take time to adjust, but with your care, I'm sure he'll come around." The family eagerly agreed, and soon Thistle was on his way to a new home, a home where he would be loved, respected, and treated with the patience he needed to fully bloom. A few weeks later, Chloe received an update from the family. Thistle was thriving in his new home. He had become more comfortable around the young girl and was even starting to explore more of the house, hopping around with excitement. They had set up a cozy space for him in their living room, and the little girl spent hours reading stories to him, talking to him as if he understood every word. Chloe smiled as she read the message. It was moments like these that made all the hard work worth it. Thistle had come so far, from a scared, trembling rabbit to a beloved pet in a family that adored him. For Chloe, there was nothing more fulfilling than knowing that each animal she rescued had a chance to live a better life. Whether it was a dog, a cat, or a rabbit, she believed that every animal deserved a second chance at happiness. As she finished her work for the day and looked out at the rescue center, Chloe felt a deep sense of satisfaction. There were always more animals to save, more lives to change, and she was ready for the next one. It was early morning when Chloe received a familiar call, a call that made her heart skip a beat. It was from the local shelter, a place she had worked with in the past. They had a dog that needed urgent help. This wasn't just any dog, though. The shelter worker hesitated as they told Chloe the dog's name. Max. Max. Chloe's mind immediately went to the dog she had worked with a year ago. Max had been a large, energetic German shepherd with a heartbreaking history. He had been rescued from a puppy mill and had spent most of his life in a cage, afraid of the world around him. It had taken Chloe months to help him trust again, and when the right family had come along, Max had found a loving home. Or so she thought. The shelter worker explained that Max had been returned after a year with his adopted family. They couldn't handle his energy and had given up on him. The news left Chloe devastated. How could someone give up on such a wonderful dog after all the progress he had made? "I'll come get him," Chloe said firmly, her heart aching for Max. He had come so far, and now he was back at square one. When Chloe arrived at the shelter to pick up Max, her heart sank. The once bright, playful dog that had gone on walks with her in the past was now a shell of himself. His eyes were dull, his tail drooped, and he cowered when the staff tried to approach him. The harsh reality of his return was obvious. Max had regressed, and the emotional scars from his past were more apparent than ever. As Chloe approached his kennel, Max didn't seem to recognize her. He trembled in the corner, his body stiff with fear. For a moment, Chloe felt helpless. It wasn't the same dog she had once known. This Max was broken, frightened, and distrustful. She knew that the road ahead would be long. "Max," she whispered gently, crouching down to his level, her voice filled with warmth. "It's me, Chloe. I'm here to help you again, buddy. You're safe." Max slowly lifted his head, his eyes wary but not as frightened as before. Chloe opened his cage door carefully, sitting beside him without making any sudden movements. She knew it was going to take time, but she also knew that Max had the strength to heal once more. The first few days at the rescue center were filled with tension. Max hid in corners, avoiding eye contact, and would often flinch if someone got too close. Chloe spent hours sitting quietly beside him, offering him his favorite treats, talking to him softly, and letting him come to her on his own terms. She gave him space, but she was also patient, slowly breaking down the walls that had been built around his heart. The staff at the center were also supportive, understanding that Max needed a different approach than many of the other dogs. They kept the noise levels low, and Chloe made sure that Max had plenty of quiet time to himself. Slowly, he began to trust again. He would occasionally come to Chloe for a scratch behind the ears or a gentle rub on his belly. After a week, Max took his first hesitant steps outside again. He stood at the door, looking out at the world beyond the shelter, as if unsure whether he was ready to face it once more. Chloe stepped outside first, calling his name softly. "Come on, Max. You don't have to be afraid." Max looked at her, then back at the open door. He took a tentative step, then another, until he was standing outside in the fresh air. Chloe smiled as he walked cautiously beside her, his body still tense but no longer fearful. As the weeks passed, Max's progress was slow but steady. He began to gain weight, and his once matted fur started to shine again. His personality slowly emerged from the shell of fear that had once enveloped him. He started to play again, running in the yard with Chloe, chasing after a ball, and even wagging his tail at the sight of his favorite humans. But the hardest part was still yet to come, finding him a forever home. Chloe was determined not to let Max fall into the wrong hands again. He needed a home that would understand his struggles, a family that could offer the patience he required. Chloe knew that Max was worth it, that he deserved another chance to be loved and cherished. It wasn't long before a family came to visit the shelter looking for a dog to adopt. The mother and father, along with their young daughter, had heard about Max's story through the local animal rescue community and wanted to meet him. Chloe was hesitant at first, but as she watched them interact with Max, she began to feel hope rise in her chest. The young girl knelt down in front of Max, speaking to him in a soft, gentle voice. "Hi, Max. I'm Mia. I'm going to take good care of you." Max looked at Mia, his eyes softening. He cautiously approached her, then licked her hand, his tail giving a tiny wag. Chloe's heart skipped a beat. It was a moment of breakthrough. After several visits and careful consideration, Max's adoption was finalized. The family was ready to bring him home, and Chloe knew it was the right choice. She made sure to give them tips on how to help Max adjust to his new life. It wouldn't be easy, but she knew they were the right people for him. They had already shown patience, and with time, Max would become the loving, loyal dog he had always been capable of being. The day they left the shelter with Max was bittersweet for Chloe. She watched as the family drove away, Max in the back seat, his head resting against the window. Chloe felt a lump in her throat, but she smiled through it. She had saved him once, before, and now he was on his way to the life he deserved. As the car disappeared into the distance, Chloe turned to the shelter. There would always be more animals to rescue, more lives to save. But Max's journey had come full circle, and that was all that mattered. Life at the rescue center had calmed down after Max's adoption, but Chloe knew better than to expect things to stay quiet for long. The phone rang again, a new challenge in the making. This time, it was about a dog named Daisy. Chloe listened as the caller explained the situation. Daisy had been found tied to a fence in an abandoned yard, malnourished, and covered in dirt. She was a small, timid terrier, and the woman who had found her wasn't sure how long Daisy had been left alone. Daisy had been brought to the local shelter, but the shelter was already at full capacity and didn't have the resources to help. That's when Chloe stepped in. She didn't hesitate. She knew that every life was precious, and Daisy needed help right away. She drove to the shelter and arrived just as they were bringing the small terrier into the intake area. Daisy looked up at Chloe with wide, fearful eyes. She was trembling, clearly frightened by the new environment and the people around her. "Hey, sweet girl," Chloe whispered, crouching down to Daisy's level. "You're safe now." Daisy flinched, but didn't try to run away. Chloe gently reached out to pet her, and Daisy's soft fur felt like a whisper beneath her fingertips. She was so small, her ribs showing through her thin coat. Chloe's heart ached for the little dog, but she knew this was a moment she couldn't waste. Daisy needed her now. Chloe helped settle Daisy into a quiet room at the center, away from the other animals. She gave Daisy a soft blanket and fresh food and water, taking time to let the terrified dog relax. Daisy curled into a ball on the blanket, her tiny body shaking, but Chloe stayed by her side, talking to her softly, offering comfort in every way she could. The next few days were filled with small steps of progress. Daisy ate her food, but only when Chloe wasn't watching. She would occasionally peek out from under the blanket, her eyes darting around the room in search of a threat. Chloe respected Daisy's need for space and never pushed her, allowing Daisy to come to her in her own time. Every day, Chloe would sit quietly, offering treats from a distance. She never made any sudden moves and always spoke in calm, soothing tones. Gradually, Daisy started to trust Chloe enough to eat when she was present, her little body relaxing slightly as she realized there was no danger. It was in these quiet moments that Chloe saw the most change in Daisy. The first time Daisy approached her willingly, Chloe was stunned. Daisy stood in front of her, hesitating for a moment before nuzzling her hand. Chloe smiled, her heart swelling with pride. It was a small step, but for Daisy, it was everything. "Good girl, Daisy," Chloe whispered, petting her gently. "You're doing so well." Weeks passed, and Daisy's transformation continued. She was still timid, but her confidence was growing. She began to play with toys, chasing after a ball with tentative enthusiasm. She still struggled with meeting new people, but Chloe could see the spark of joy in her eyes when she realized that she was safe. One morning, Chloe brought Daisy outside for the first time. She had been hesitant about taking her out of the shelter at first, worried that the new environment might overwhelm her. But Daisy seemed ready. Chloe opened the door to the yard and stepped outside, calling Daisy softly. "Come on, Daisy. Let's take a little walk." Daisy hesitated, but Chloe's calm demeanor seemed to reassure her. Daisy took a few hesitant steps outside, her ears perked and her tail low. She sniffed the air, her body still uncertain, but less fearful than before. As the days went by, Daisy grew more and more comfortable in the yard. She loved the soft grass beneath her paws and the warmth of the sun on her coat. She even started to chase after sticks and run around the yard with a newfound joy. Chloe couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. Daisy was healing, and Chloe was proud of how far she had come. Despite the progress Daisy had made, Chloe knew that the time would come when she would have to find her a forever home. Daisy still needed someone patient, someone who understood that her trust was fragile and that she needed time to fully blossom. Chloe was determined to find the right person for Daisy, someone who would give her the space she needed and offer her a life full of love and security. One afternoon, as Chloe was working at the center, a woman came in asking about adopting a dog. Her name was Sarah, and she had a calm, gentle energy that immediately caught Chloe's attention. Sarah explained that she had recently lost her older dog and was looking for a companion. She wanted a dog who might need a little extra care, someone she could help heal. Chloe led Sarah to Daisy's pen, and the moment Daisy saw Sarah, she froze. Her eyes locked onto the stranger, her body stiff with uncertainty. Chloe watched closely, ready to intervene if necessary. Sarah knelt down, giving Daisy space, and spoke in a soft voice. "Hey there, sweet girl. I'm Sarah. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." Daisy took a cautious step forward, then another. Her body was still tense, but her eyes softened just a bit. It wasn't much, but Chloe saw enough to know that Sarah was the right fit for Daisy. She had that quiet, reassuring presence that Daisy needed. Over the next few weeks, Sarah came to visit Daisy regularly. Each time, Daisy became a little more comfortable. Sarah brought treats, soft toys, and blankets to make Daisy feel more at home. Slowly but surely, Daisy's walls started to crumble. Finally, the day came when Sarah was ready to adopt Daisy. Chloe watched as the two of them walked out of the center together, Daisy's tiny steps following Sarah's with growing confidence. Chloe felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had done it. Again. Another life saved. Another dog given the chance to be loved. A few weeks after Daisy's adoption, Chloe received an update from Sarah. Daisy was thriving in her new home. She had become more playful, more affectionate, and even started to trust other people, though she was still cautious around strangers. Sarah had created a calm environment for Daisy, giving her the time and space she needed to heal. Chloe smiled as she read the message. Daisy had found her place in the world, and Sarah had found the companion she needed. It was moments like these that made all the hard work worth it. Chloe sat back in her office at the rescue center, reflecting on the journey. There would always be more animals in need. But with each rescue, each second chance, Chloe knew she was making a difference, and that was all that mattered. As time passed, Chloe continued to run the rescue center with the same passion and dedication that had driven her from the very beginning. She had seen so many animals come and go, each one leaving its mark on her heart. Every dog, every cat, every rabbit. They all had their own stories, their own struggles, but also their own moments of hope. And Chloe was there for every one of them. But now, after years of rescuing and rebuilding lives, Chloe felt it was time to take a step back. She had dedicated her life to these animals, and while there was always more to be done, she knew that the center was in good hands. The team she had built over the years was strong, filled with compassionate, tireless people who shared her vision. One day, Chloe stood in the middle of the shelter, looking around at the animals she had saved. She thought of Max, the dog she had fought so hard to help. She thought of Daisy, who had found her forever home, and the countless others who had crossed her path. The phone rang one last time, but this time, it wasn't a call for a rescue. It was a call from the city's animal control office, asking if Chloe could help with a special project. They had secured funding for a new animal rehabilitation program, one that would partner with local shelters and rescue centers to provide even more resources for animals in need. They wanted Chloe to be a part of it, to help guide the program's development and offer her expertise in rescue and rehabilitation. Chloe's heart swelled with pride. This was the next chapter, the legacy she had worked so hard to build. It wasn't just about rescuing individual animals anymore. It was about creating lasting change, building a network of support for all animals in need. Chloe accepted the offer, knowing it would allow her to reach even more animals. But she also knew that her role would change. It was time for her to focus on the bigger picture, to help shape the future of animal welfare, ensuring that shelters across the country had the resources they needed to make a difference. She wasn't saying goodbye to the animals. She was simply moving into a new phase of her life. The rescue center, with all its love and history, would continue to thrive, now under the capable hands of her trusted team. Chloe would still visit, still offer guidance, still be there for the animals who needed her. But she would also be spreading her message of compassion and care to a broader community, helping to build a network that could support animals far and wide. As she packed up her office, Chloe smiled at the framed photos on the wall, images of the animals she had saved, the families they had joined, the love that had transformed their lives. These photos were reminders of the work she had done, the lives she had touched. The last thing Chloe did before leaving was visit the kennel where the animals currently being cared for were. She walked from cage to cage, offering gentle words, petting the animals who still needed her care. She stood at the door for a moment, feeling the weight of everything she had accomplished, and for the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. She knew there would always be more animals to rescue, more lives to change, but she had made her mark, and the work would continue, with or without her. That's what mattered most. Chloe left the rescue center that day, knowing that her journey was far from over. She was just starting a new chapter, one that would allow her to reach even more animals and ensure that the message of kindness and care was spread far and wide. She would continue to inspire, continue to teach, and continue to advocate for those who couldn't speak for themselves. As she drove away, she looked out at the horizon, the sun setting on a day that marked the end of one journey and the beginning of another. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lives she had touched and for the work that lay ahead. And as the road stretched out before her, Chloe smiled, knowing that no matter where she went or what she did, her heart would always be with the animals she had saved and the ones still waiting for their second chance. The end.